Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're going to review One Assassination Under God, Chapter 1 by Marilyn Manson. So we've been listening to this album non-stop for an entire week, and I'm going to open up the floor and comment on, I don't know if you noticed this, or if this happened for you with the album experience. It kind of flies by. It's only 9 tracks and kind of an average length, like 40 range?
43.
43 minutes, so it's like very average, but it flew by, but it didn't really feel like that much of a problem. Because I find there are albums that fly by and you're like, I can't think of anything to talk about. This album just comes and goes. But I find, maybe it's the album being 9 tracks or something, but I find that it kind of just goes through everything, and I'm kind of close to the end by before I know it. But it feels like every track serves a purpose. I feel like there's really no filler on this album. There's some songs I like more than others. There's some songs I'm like, okay, whatever on. But I can still acknowledge that every track serves a purpose for the kind of musical and I guess lyrical storytelling in this record. But I just found it interesting that, wow, it kind of just flows really well. And I think a part of that is kind of just how it's kind of crafted to be this experience. But it kind of just, at some points, kind of flew by. It was weird.
Okay. I feel the same way, but for a different reason. And it's like I'm going to agree with you, but I'm going to contradict what you just said. Because I feel like it flies by in a sense, but I feel like there are about 3 tracks that do kind of serve the same purpose on the album. Mm-hmm. Like sonically, they'll kind of do the same, serve the same vibe kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about last week, kind of. I was saying in the second half, it kind of felt like there were some songs that kind of felt like they did some stuff I already heard.
Exactly, and I feel like for that reason, it kind of feels like it's like this song's happened already, so your brain kind of overlaps it or skips it in a way. So in that sense, it kind of does feel like it goes by fast, but I felt the same way just for a different reason, I guess.
And to comment on that, there's a specific song actually, and this was just a really, the kind of situation I found myself in with this song in particular was weird, because for a while I was thinking, yeah, this song doesn't really, it just kind of feels a bit repetitive, right? And the more I was listening to this song specifically, I'm like, no, this is a really good song. Even though it does have stuff that I've kind of heard earlier in the album, but just this song itself, I like it. That song is Death Is Not a Costume. The Coma Black / Coma White vibe is kind of the vibe that I think you're referring to, that is kind of there in a few tracks of this album. I feel like this track might be the closest sounding to those, in that vibe. When he says you got cracks in your magic, I don't know why I like that. When he says that part of the song, I like that a lot. And I'm listening to this song, I'm like, it just kind of feels like, the most befitting of a kind of successor to those two. Like if you were to make a Coma Gray, maybe that's it. You know what I mean? Especially if you kind of think about the lyrics of that and try to think about some of the lyrics for Coma Black and Coma White, it kind of feels like it fits in.
I'd have to look at them to agree or disagree, but I mean, I get the premise behind the vibe totally as well.
Yeah, and then that vibe kind of felt like it was there in a few songs, and even though this one's in the second half and it kind of felt like I've heard it, but I'm listening to the song more and more, I'm like, I still like this song, it's good. I like it. When it comes on, I enjoy hearing it. It's not a song I hear, I'm just like, oh yeah, here's this again. I'm just like, nah, this is nice, I like it.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt that even with songs that did kind of repeat that vibe, they weren't necessarily bad songs either. I feel like the last track, Sacrifice of the Mass, is similar in that regard, but I think it's a good and effective closer. So it's like, yeah, I can appreciate the song. It just doesn't hit me as much as I would want it to, probably because this vibe and tone has already been visited by a few songs on this album.
Yeah, I think, I don't know where I should piggyback off there. So Sacrifice of the Mass, I think is a fantastic song on this album. It's definitely one of the highlights for me. It's an amazing closer. It's one of those songs where you can really just feel the emotion in the vocals, at least for me. The line where he says, the greater the star, the more violent the demise, not only do I love the delivery of the line, it's amazing, but the line was just sticking with me. It was in my head all week long, no matter what I was listening to or what I was doing. It was just in my head. And I feel like there's a lot of fanfare on this album. There's a lot of throwbacks, callbacks to different albums, whether it's lyrically or musically or just whatever. And I think that's deliberate. I don't think he's just being Marilyn Manson. I think he's deliberately sprinkling in all these things from his past records that people love and being like, you guys are gonna love this kind of thing.
I mean, look at the album art. It takes aspects from all 3 of the Triptych albums.
Exactly, but like this, like the greater the star, the more violent the demise, I took as a reference to the Dope Show, because we're all stars now in the Dope Show. He references himself as a star multiple times. So I kind of just saw that as a lyrical throwback. But at the beginning of the song, there's a lyric about hearing his mother's voice or something like that, beckoning him basically to the afterlife, like your time has come, it's time to wrap it up, you're coming with me now. But then towards the end of the song, you hear almost a female sounding chanting voice. And I'm like, is that his mother's voice? Like, is that
him entering the?
Is that him entering the afterlife or something? The song, it feels like a swan song. It really does. But the fact that the album's called Chapter 1 really suggests otherwise.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a conflict there. But it really feels like a swan song. Like if that was the last song Marilyn Manson ever wrote.
Oh wow.
That would have been what an ending.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a fantastic closer to the album. I really looked forward to it coming on every time I listened to it, so that's definitely a highlight for me.
Yeah, no, it is a strong track, and I think, I feel like, it's called Chapter 1, and it's like maybe the story's being told in reverse order like the Triptych was.
Could be.
Where it's kind of like they were released in one order, but the story order is the other way around.
Could be.
So, I fully feel like he's kind of creating like, not just Triptych 2, but I feel like he's basically kind of just doing that kind of just arc again, but differently.
I think he's just tapping into it.
He's tapping into it. And I feel like some of the strongest stuff from this band is when there's a lot of emotional charge to it.
Yeah.
A lot of people are saying this is the best album since Hollywood. And one of the reasons why Hollywood is as strong of an album as it is because it's so unbelievably personally and emotionally charged.
Yeah.
Because of what happened all around that time and all that.
Yeah, it was a big time.
It was a big thing. So I feel like he tapped into that, obviously because of what was going on throughout the past few years for him. And, you can feel that in the music. Like you mentioned, those lines in Sacrifice of the Mass. There's a line from that song that just always sticks out to me. Tell the abyss to stop staring at me.
Yeah.
Every time I hear that.
Yeah.
Oh.
The lyric too. It's the delivery of the lyric.
Delivery
He just knows how to do it.
He's so good with that. And, I think one big thing for this band as well, I think Marilyn Manson is very good at writing catchy and hooky music, but it does not feel cheap or hollow. I find it's very easy to write a catchy hook or something that's going to get in your ear. There's, a lot of music theory that can easily support that, even some science that can support that. But what I find with Marilyn Manson is that there's a lot of stuff that gets in your ear. There's a lot of stuff you want to sing along with. There's a lot of stuff that'll stand out like that. But there's so much depth to it. It doesn't feel like this is a cheap whatever sing-along song. It's like this is a very personal song with a lot of depth and meaning, and it's carefully crafted, but at the same time, it's got me singing along.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also feel like in his past work, he's developed formulas that have worked for him. Like The Beautiful People is probably his biggest hit. I don't think anybody could disagree with that as far as non-covers. But he reached a formula for that song.
That's true, that kind of shuffly.
That shuffly kind of thing. And then you listen to a song like Sacrilegious, like you can sing the words for Beautiful People over this song.
Or Disposable Teens.
I got notes for both of those exactly, and that's the thing. Those are two of his most popular songs. They both have that shuffle type of swingy kind of beat, and he just nailed that formula. He's good at that.
Yeah, but Sacrilegious doesn't really feel like, he's just rehashing that. It just feels like he's doing that again, but it's something in a different form.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, that wasn't necessarily my favorite song in the album. It was good, I liked it, I liked what it did, and I liked how it stood out. Not everyone, nothing else really sounded like it on the record.
Yeah.
Just wasn't really my favorite. If we're gonna talk about some of my favorite tracks, I still love the title track. I think that's a fantastic opener for this album, and I said that in our reaction, how great that song was, and I still feel that way. It kind of, it's a grim opening to an album full of these negative emotions and frustration, and you feel that. The scream that it builds up to at the end, amazing.
Nice payoff.
It's got it's a similar eeriness to Great Big White World, or even God Eat God, kind of. Like, it's kind of puts you.
Crucifixion in space is what I was.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
But like I said, there's a lot. I don't disagree with you either. There's lots of things in there. It's kind of like callbacks.
Yeah, and I'll mention as well. I mean, honestly, like the other singles as well. Sick as the Secrets Within. I think that's a great song. I love the intro to that song where they start hitting the shots on these downbeats before they get into it. It feels like such a grand kind of opening for such a somber song, and I love that. It's this feeling of grand, but also being kind of close, small, and personal. And it's got that great hybrid. Raise the Red Flag is a banger. Love that song. That song, it feels so triumphant in a sense.
It's like the fight song of this album.
It's kind of like the fight song. Like, I'm taking this back for myself. Like, I'm kind of, you know what I mean? And
there's even like a hey, hey, hey part.
Yeah,
I think the fight song had that too. So like,
that's right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's catchy, has the energy. Like I said, feels triumphant. Every time it comes on, I'm like, yeah, this song is sick. Love it. Not If You Understand is also really good. That one has that old school bite to it. You know, I feel like even when he did kind of have bite, like an album like Heaven Upside Down, that had songs with bite to it. But it was a different kind of bite where this kind of gives you that industrial vibe of the old school stuff.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't sound like a rehash of the old school stuff. And I think it's really cool that he was able to do that. I think that was it was good. It's also a really good pacing shift from No Funeral Without Applause and The Secrets Within. To have that between it, it's a good shift. If I were to talk about, I guess, my least favorite song, and it's not even because it's a bad song, it's Meet Me in Purgatory. It just kind of, it was the only real just kind of come and go song. And even then, there's a part of the song that still sticks out to me that I like. At the end, like the last chorus out when he says, will you stand by my side? Will you stand in the way? You know, what will you do when they come to murder me? That last chorus out where he sings that, I like that. But otherwise, the song, it just kind of comes and goes for me. But that's really the only one that does that.
Yeah, I agree with Meet Me in Purgatory as being the weakest track on the album, I think. The standout part for me on that song was the bass line. The bass line I thought was nice, and it kind of carries the whole song, which is another thing that's prominent throughout Marilyn Manson's catalog, bass lines carrying songs. Yeah, you know what? I had a pretty good time listening to this album. I don't want to talk about One Assassination Under God because I think it's a great song, but I disagree with it as an opener. And it's a little bit of an unfair disagreement because I'm listening to the album on repeat, and hearing that after hearing Sacrifice of the Mass, those songs don't go well with each other. So that was my hang-up. Sacrifice of the Mass is like very somber in its presentation, and then having another somber song right after that, I felt was... Again, this is an unfair criticism.
I feel like that's an unfair criticism.
But even still, even without that, I still think Not If You Understand would have been a better opener. I think just opening the album with a bang would have gone a little bit further than opening an album with a song that starts somber and ends with a bang.
Well, consider, other songs in the triptych are like that. Like, you look at you. I'm just saying, it's not unfamiliar for him to do something like that.
It's not, but this is this album, and this is how I feel about it. I just feel like the song's great. I just don't like the placement of it, just because of the mood that it brings.
Yeah. In contrast, look at Irresponsible Hate Anthem. That's how, starting the album with a bang.
Exactly.
Like, explosion. Whoa, we're here.
Yeah, so I feel like
you think that would
Not
be
If
better
You Understand would have been a better opener for this. And then if you're listening to it on repeat like I do, you don't have two of the similar vibey kind of songs in a row. So again, that's a minor, I don't even call it a gripe, just a criticism, a suggestion, I don't know. So there's 3 songs in this album, like I mentioned earlier, that I kind of feel like all fall in the same ballpark. No Funeral Without Applause, Death Is Not a Costume, and Meet Me in Purgatory. Again, they're all fine songs, and there's certain things that I like about each of them, but none of them have anything in them that is like something that I really look forward to. And I feel like they all serve the same purpose, and you could have got rid of 2 out of the 3, it doesn't matter which, and the album overall as a feeling, as a sound, as a whatever, an idea, wouldn't really change much, in my opinion. So I'm a bit hung up on those 3 songs. Not If You Understand, I think, is a good song, but there's nothing great about it. So Not If You Understand, I think is entertaining, but I also think it's gonna be a fan favorite, to be honest. I'm curious to know what people think. It might even be dropped as a single. I wouldn't be surprised about that.
Oh, that would probably have a great video.
Yeah, so I think it's got those elements going for it, but there's just something about it that just wasn't really gripping me as much as other songs could. Then you take One Assassination Under God, As Sick as the Secrets Within, Sacrilegious, Raise the Red Flag, and Sacrifice of the Mass. All those songs are fantastic, both instrumentally, lyrically, mood-wise, just everything about them is just really good stuff the stuff I want from this band. Even like lyrically, you hear stuff like Cadaver Dogs Already Know Your Face and Raise the Red Flag, and I'm like, what the fuck's that even mean? And I'm thinking about it, and this is why I love Marilyn Manson. It's like makes you think about stuff. You're a dead man walking. You're already dead. Cadaver Dogs Already Know Your Face. That's cool shit.
Yeah. That's
cool shit. And like I said, there's references to other albums like, and I could be wrong about this, but in Death Is Not a Costume, he references a horse, and he references a horse in Heaven Upside Down and Tattooed in Reverse. I don't know if that means anything.
A Four Rusted Horses thing as well from High and Low.
Could be. Yeah, exactly, and I think that it's deliberate where he's referencing his own work in the past, and that's what I meant when I said there's a lot of fanfare on this album. And we see comments on our first impressions video, a lot of people saying this is the best thing since Hollywood or since whatever that era, and it's because this is beckoning back to that.
Yeah.
It's kind of skipping over like, what, 6, 7 albums and beckoning back to that.
It's like, it's yes and no. Yes in the terms of like, yeah, this is, a lot of a kind of continuation of the concepts from there.
Yeah.
But it also feels like, kind of like the story continues in a sense of like, years later, the story continues.
Because it's still an evolution.
Because it's still an evolution. And, all of the albums and eras and things that, happened since from Hollywood to now contributed to this album sounding like it does.
Yeah.
And I will say, people saying it's the best since Hollywood, there are some other phenomenal albums past Hollywood, just saying.
I think people are sleeping on a few. People are sleeping on
The Pale Emperor.
Heaven Upside Down, they're
That
sleeping
too.
on it. Honestly, even give Born Villain another spin, you'd probably be surprised.
Yeah,
Stuff like that, right?
There's some bangers in there.
Yeah. Anyways, I think we should rate the album.
All right.
I'll go first. So I think this is a pretty good album. I have a bit of a bias when it comes to Marilyn Manson. This is basically my gateway to heavier music. I discovered Marilyn Manson when I was 11 years old. I was Marilyn Manson for Halloween when I was 12. Antichrist Superstar was one of the first albums I bought with my own money. Like, I go back with this guy, and there's a bit of bias there. But as a reviewer, I have to see things from as much of an objective perspective as I can, and it's all subjective, doesn't matter.
Nice.
As much as I enjoyed this album, the 3 songs I mentioned that were too much of like, they're kind of anchors on the album, brought the score down to a point where it's unfortunately not gonna get a toe tag, but it's a 7.5, which is a shame. But Marilyn Manson's on the 2 toe tag lists already, so I don't feel too bad about that. And We Are Chaos got a 6 from me, so I actually went back and listened to that to see if my score for this album matches that, and it does. I think that's a safe score for there, and this lands at a 7.5. And honestly, you could have taken one of those songs out or done something a little bit more with either of them, and it would have boosted the score up just enough, but the cookie crumbled just like that. I was also, just before I pass the floor a little bit, sorry for rambling, I was tossing a little bit on some of these songs. Like No Funeral Without Applause, my score was tossing a little bit. But I figured, if I'm not sure about it, I gotta err on the side of, on the lower side, because I want an album to really deserve and own a toe tag score. So it's unfortunate. This is like the skinniest, slimmest of hairs that it's missing.
Single point.
For me, anyway. I'm curious to know what TV Fish gives it, so what's up?
You mentioned We Are Chaos. And I actually haven't listened to that album again since basically our review, except for some songs that I liked from it. But from what I can remember, that felt like it's a weird way I put this, a tired album. The kind of album that an artist makes where there's kind of just something that's just not working anymore, or something's tired, creatively.
I agree. That's a good way.
I've seen this with many bands where they make an album and it just wasn't really kind of like that great, and the rest of the discography has been great.
Yeah.
And then they come back with like something awesome. This was awesome. I think there's just so much more life breathed into the musical project from this record. He's, it's an evolution for the music, for himself, there's so much. And I think it's really kind of like a comeback in that sense.
Yeah.
So, even though, Heaven Upside Down was really good, We Are Chaos kind of felt like not as good, but then this
Felt forced.
kind of, yeah. And this came back in full force. It gets my toe tag, which is unfortunate that it is 0.5 of a score away from getting on our list. But that does not mean there's anything wrong with this album. We still quite enjoyed it listening throughout the week.
Yeah.
And that's all we got for our review today. So remember to like the video if you liked it, and tell us in the comments below, what did you think of this album a week after its release? Is it the best since Hollywood? Are you fans of the albums after Hollywood? Because there are some awesome albums after. Just saying. You know what?
Don't sleep on those albums.
Don't sleep. Anyway, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm TV Fish.
I'm Battle Self.
We'll see you guys later.